McLaren 675 LT was one of the most surprising cars I've ever driven. Now obviously I expected it to be good, but it was better than good. I described it as a Cayman on steroids, which I meant as a serious compliment. It had that brilliant steering and fantastic balance you get with a Cayman, but with the added benefit of savage power. Not only that, but on the outside it just looked perfect in my eyes. Then the 765 LT came along as its successor, and on paper, I wasn't really sold. The press shots didn't do it for me, and I thought it looked overdone compared to the elegant 675. But in the flesh and out on the road, it is just about the wildest looking thing you can imagine. Has so much presence, and would you just look at that colour. MSO defined Lantana purple if you're interested. But can the driving experience prove me wrong that it just has too much power? Well, there's only one way to find out. This should be an interesting one. Saying something a bit like this about the F12 when I drove the TDF. When I drove the 675 LT, check out that video if you haven't already, I don't ever remember thinking, you know, this could do with more power. And yet, here we are, 765 horsepower. That's 45 more than the already outrageous 720S. And it's 80 kilos lighter as well at 1,339 kilos, so it's a proper featherweight by today's standards. Before you even go anywhere, it feels really racy in here, even without the optional center seats. These P1 seats are awesome, they're really snug, and the driving position is absolutely spot on. You just sit low, legs out in front of you, the wheel comes close. It just feels like a racing car. And the view out of McLaren's is great as well, with this low scuttle on the front. Oh my god. Yeah, I'll come on to the performance in a little bit, but before we start, believe me, this is more than just a 720S with a bit of extra power. There's so much less refinement. As you can hear, I'm shouting in here and I'm not even going that fast. And this one is just on the standard P0 tyres rather than the optional Trofeo R's, and as you can see, they have a bit of a fight on their hands, because that engine is just explosive. It's a bit boosty. Revs all the way to 8,500 when you actually get the chance, which is mad for a turbocharged engine. It doesn't exactly sound sonorous, you don't go up and down the gears like you would in something like a GT3 just for the hell of it to play it like a musical instrument. But there's plenty of noise and it just sounds of power. No one needs this much power. And frankly, it's pretty bonkers that anyone with the money to do so can just go out and buy one of these and drive it and turn everything off and whack the foot down and probably end up down that hill there. Anyway, believe it or not, the 765 is about more than just power. And you realise that the first time you tip it into a bend. The handling is sublime. So direct, so flat. But at the same time, the steering feels really natural. It's quite weighty, it's not light and artificial like you get in the modern Lamborghinis. It does exactly what you think it will. It just grips. The brakes, the carbon ceramic brakes. You've got to give them a good shove, which I quite like because they're easy to modulate and God, they don't half haul you down. The double clutch box is so quick and it gives you these sometimes pretty aggressive kicks in the back on upshifts. And then on the way down, you sometimes get those lovely whip cracks we loved so much about the 675. And on the way up, this is a crazy thing to drive over a road. The braking, the sheer grip of the thing, and then the power on the way out. It's pretty full on. You do get into a nice rhythm with it when you do that as well, when you just settle it back a little and stop being so aggressive with the thing. The only thing is, because it is so under stressed, I'm going the speed limit now, I'm not even trying slightly. You don't really get that much back in terms of noise and excitement. And that's where I feel it's probably a good time to hand over to Jonty, who I imagine screaming at the top of his lungs right now.
They say that there is no replacement for displacement. Lamborghini's equivalent flagship model, the Aventador SVJ, does away with any turbos. Instead, what it has is 2.5 litres and 4 cylinders extra. That is basically the same as the engine from a BAC Mono. And having all of that extra capacity means it has more brake horsepower, a full 4 more, just 4 more brake horsepower, and slightly less torque. But who cares? And it sounds like this. Okay, so the 765 LT is undoubtedly a lot faster than an SVJ. With its weighty 4-wheel drive system, the SVJ is 300 kilograms heavier. And with it having less torque, it is undoubtedly going to be a bit slower than the McLaren. But if it's drama that you want, this has it in bucket loads. Now, whereas the 765 has active aero, the Aventador SVJ has Aerodinamica Lamborghini Attiva, which is basically the same thing, but it just sounds better. But this ALA system managed to increase downforce 40% over the Aventador SV. So it is actually quite advanced for Lamborghini, who in the past you always thought of having a more agricultural approach to everything. Now the gearbox is of course still the old single clutch system, but it's a lot smoother than what I remember it being from early Aventadors, and it does add a lot of drama. This will top out at near enough 220 miles an hour. That is definitely hypercar fast. This will make any sort of small trip to the local shop to get a pint of milk exciting.
So as we thought, two wildly different driving experiences, but they're both appealing in their own way. The price of these two is as similar as the power as well, with just 10 grand between them. The McLaren's the slightly cheaper option at £260,000, although fun fact, this press car has a well-spec Cayman GT4 in options. Now it goes without saying, the one thing the LT can't match is that unhinged V12 soundtrack. And just like the Huracan Evo we reviewed recently, that engine could sell the SVJ to you on its own. But despite the power figures, the gulf in straight line performance between these two from a roll is hardly believable. The downside is that the numbers end up in troublesome territory far too easily, so you're rarely scratching the surface of its capabilities. And even on track, it'll probably take a fairly handy driver to fully exploit the thing. It's held back here a little by the standard P0s too, so planting your foot feels a bit like trying to walk a grizzly bear with a piece of string. But on the right tyres, I can't see much coming close. Don't think the SVJ doesn't deserve some consideration though. It'll probably be the last of its kind, and love it or hate it, the Aventador has a certain charm, and the sheer brutality of the way it drives mean you do have to be in the mood for it, but if you want full-on theatre, there's nothing else like it. The McLaren takes a different approach, and frankly, it feels like it's from another lifetime. At first, I was adamant that it wouldn't be better than the 675, and that it just has too much power to enjoy. But the more miles I did, the more I had to admit I was wrong. The steering is just about perfect, and so is the chassis, and whilst I still maintain no one needs this much power, the thrust is just absurd, and the whole driving experience is addictive. This is another one of those examples of two cars that are so different, the dream would be to have them both in your garage. But let's say you have to choose just one. Which would it be? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for lots more supercar content to come.